Good morning, everyone. Thanks for jumping on. Amanda is just sharing a few links for everyone in the chat for a couple of things that we're going to talk about today. So you're welcome to click on those if you'd like. And we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Amanda, could you go ahead and share those links again in just a minute once everybody gets on? I forget that sometimes you can't see the chat that already happened. So I think some people can't see them. We'll share them again in just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, dear. So while we are waiting for everybody to get on, I know you all know the drill with the housekeeping notes about staying muted. That kind of applies to this meeting. Definitely want to encourage you all, if you have questions, to just unmute anytime if you feel comfortable, or you can put questions in the chat anytime. Today, this is really to kind of walk through the application with you all and share information. So we want this to be as much of a conversation as you all would like it to be. So just feel free to unmute anytime. I'll pause throughout so that we can stop for questions. And I think it's 11, so let's go ahead and get started. So I want to start off just by asking if you have had time to review the RFA or any of the material on the website. If you haven't, that's completely fine. We're going to walk through it today. If you have, you can either put it in the chat or you can do a reaction. It should be down on the right corner. You can do like a thumbs up if you've seen it and a thumbs down if you haven't. All right, I see lots of thumbs, so that's good. Everybody that's reviewed it, if you have questions today, please feel free to stop and share those. And then I'm just going to review really quickly a couple of the links that are in the chat for you. We have the website, of course. I know you're all familiar with this. All of the documents are going to be posted on there. So there's no PowerPoint today. I'm just going to share my screen and kind of walk through everything. We have the frequently asked questions document. So as you all ask questions, we're going to be sharing those questions on the FAQs. We'll make sure that we redact any information specific to your council when we share those. But just make sure that you're keeping in on that document as you have questions. And then if you want to ask a question, but you don't want to like take yourself off of mute, or you don't want to put it in the chat, you kind of want to submit it on the side so that we can look at it later, you can go ahead and send that on the Google form. You're welcome to use that. Try and give you as many options for asking questions as I could think of. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so we are going to start from the beginning. So I know we've talked briefly in previous webinars about the RFA. So we worked on the RFA this year quite a bit just to make sure that it's really user-friendly, and a good experience for everyone to complete this. So with that, I hope that after walking through this, you can kind of see those changes. And if there are areas that you think we could fine tune even better for next year, you're welcome to send those to me as you work on your RFA this year. So to get to the RFA, if you don't have it in your email, go ahead and go to Community Early Childhood Councils. And then when you scroll down here, you can see our webinar dates, the quarterly report due dates. Our most recent webinar is usually posted. And then we get down here to resources. So we have our application, the appendices for the RFA. We have a member list template for you, which is in Excel this year. We're doing this in Excel this year to make sure that we can better communicate with all of the members of the councils. And then we have a budget template, which is also in Excel this year. We'll go over that in some more detail in a bit. And then the link to the frequently asked questions document is also found here. So I am going to start with the appendix today. I know that might seem backwards, but I just want to let you see kind of the reviewer's rubric and some of the documents in there, which might help you with writing the application. So some of this you're going to be familiar with from last year. We have our Appendix A. These are your collaboratives. So these are the same as last year. You're still going to apply in your collaborative. So if you have multiple counties, you'll stick with the same counties for this year. And then we have your checklist of all of the required components. So most of these components are very similar to what you've seen in the past. Something that's important this year that I'll highlight is that your cover page does not need to be notarized. So there, like cross that off the list of things that we need to do. Okay, and then we have another highlighted change on our checklist is this notarized affidavit. Make sure that you send this in. There's a form in the appendix with this form. Make sure that you send this in as soon as possible with your application is perfect. If you can't get it with your application, just send it in as soon as possible. This is how we get the money out to you. And I'm really working hard to make sure that those funds are available as close to July 1st as possible. And this affidavit and the IRS letter, if your fiscal agent is a 501c3, are super important. So highlight those as you're looking through this. We have our cover page. I know you're all familiar with this. Conflict of interest statement is the same as always. Commitment to reporting will be the same as always. So then we get to the evaluation. So we spent some time looking at the evaluation this year and making sure that this rubric really aligns with what we're asking for. So I would hope that you consider really looking at this rubric as you are writing your application. So you can see that there's scores for how often you met the expectation and then what area that score is related to. So just keep in mind that this rubric is available to you, and this is the rubric that the scorers will have as well. And there is also a supplemental component. This is for some additional funding that we hope will be available. We'll get into that in just a second, and I'll probably come back to this rubric.
Nicole, this is Brenda. And I just wanted to address that for anyone who has worked on this in the past, sometimes it can be kind of frustrating to not know where you got your points or where you didn't get your points. And I think that the rubric is going to be very helpful for you to be able to look at it and say, okay, I think, you know, our surface area assessment looks really good. We should give a 7 to a 9 or 10. And you'll have an idea going into turning this in what you think your score should be. And I think that will help you. Or if you see something that you're like, oh, we didn't do anything with that, this would be a good way to say, you know, we could just pop this part in and that will take care of the points for that. I really think knowing how people are going to be reviewing it will help. And Nicole and I worked really hard to make sure that there was a rubric for the reviewers to follow so that it's not so subjective. You know, when somebody gets your application and they're just having to determine what the points are, there should be a reason that the points are given a certain way. And so we thought this would be helpful. I hope that you find it that way.
Thanks, Brenda. Definitely. We definitely wanted to make sure that you all can really walk through this and check things off of your list as you put it together. And hopefully not have so many questions about what we're looking for. So, was there a question? No, okay. All right, so there's our rubric. Our budget template will also be different. We'll go to that in just a second. And then we also included this year a strategic goal worksheet for the councils to complete. So we know in the past we had a different type of plan and worksheet in the appendix, and it was kind of hard to fill out sometimes. We heard that frequently. So this will also be posted as a Word document on the website. If it's not there already, we'll make sure it gets posted. Somebody asked if these can be landscape, I think, in the chat. You can change the landscape on these if it makes it easier to stretch them out. These worksheets are for you to use. We hope that when you use these worksheets, you can take them to your meetings, to your council meetings, and really use these worksheets and goal planning sheets to help drive the work of your council. So that's really the intention of these. They will be a component of your score and a component of your checklist, but the purpose of these is really to help your council do their work. So
Nicole, it might be good to remind them also that in looking at that, if we're not sure when the reviewer is looking at it, how they got from here to here, having this little worksheet will show them. It's like, you know, show them the process and somebody will be like, oh, okay, I see how they got that.
Absolutely. And we know that sometimes it can be kind of hard to express what you intend to do with an activity or a strategy. So we're hoping that this worksheet kind of helps put pen to paper and, you know, put the big thoughts that we have about all the activities we can do on paper, and then share it with us and share it with everyone in your council so that everybody's on the same page. So again, there's the SMART goal worksheet, which has each outcome, which is listed in the RFA. And then we also have a long-term planning worksheet, which is something new as well. So what this worksheet is going to be doing, this is kind of like a logic model. If you were on our previous webinar where we talked about logic models, we're going to be looking for how you implemented the strategy in the prior year. So you can include if it was successful, if it wasn't successful, what could be done differently, your current year plan for implementing the strategy, and all of the information that you can include is listed below. And then how you think you can use this plan in the future. So is this an activity that might be sustainable? Do you think you might see outcomes from this in the future? What do you think will happen going forward? And again, this is to use. So if it's not perfect, you can continue to work on it throughout the year. And again, you'll have your member list. There's no changes to the requirements of members. And that member list is a link to an Excel document, which is here. And that should download for you when you click on it. If you do have any trouble with that, feel free to email us and we can get it over to you. And the maximum grant award per county is also the same this year as last year. And as you talked about last year with your councils, once your collaborative applies for funding and receives the funding for each county, it's up to you as a collaborative to determine how you're going to use the funding. So if you have 4 counties If you want to distribute funds evenly, that's fine. If you want to distribute funds based on this table, that's also fine. Those decisions are up to you. And then we have the affidavit, which is super important to making sure you get your funds. This does have to be notarized and mailed. And then we have our invoice template. And then something that we want to highlight before we dive into the actual application is this document, which we call Bright Spots. So Bright Spots is an example of data-driven strategies across the Commonwealth. So Amy Neal, our executive director, reached out to a few stakeholders and asked what type of data they have about some of the programs that they work on. And this document reflects some of the answers that we had to that question. So I hope that as you are looking at your application and thinking about the activities that you hope to do in the coming year, you can use this document kind of to give you some ideas of programs that have data that work well in different communities. And we know that, you know, there might be some restrictions to what can work in your community, but this just has a few ideas if you're kind of feeling stuck and not sure what a data-driven program would be. Feel free to reference this. So that is our last item there. Are there any questions on the appendices?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So I downloaded the member list Excel this morning, and it wants you to choose from a drop-down list of members, but there's no drop-down list that I could find on the sheet. Do you know where that would be?
Thank you. That's a great question, and I don't know why that's not there. I'm going to check on that and then share a new document with everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, wait, let's see.
Oh,
this is Excel. So when you click on this, does it show up here?
Oh, there it is. That was just me and my Excel knowledge. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. And I knew that there would be some varying levels of comfort with Excel, so do not hesitate ever to stop me or ask questions. I live in Excel and sometimes I forget.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, any other questions? All right, so I'm going to jump over to the application.
Nicole, I have a question. I'm sorry.
Sure, go
I
ahead.
couldn't get my mute off fast enough. So when we're doing the conflict of interest page, I have some members that have been told that they're not allowed to fill that out for whatever reason. I'm not guessing that they just don't understand what it is. How do I explain to them, or what happens if I have a member that doesn't fill it out?
Let me follow up with you on that question. That's a good question, especially as we're looking at finding new partners and new members. So let me just follow up with our team, particularly our procurement and legal team, to see what we would need to do and how to best explain that. Sorry that I don't have an answer for that right now. Nope. Okay.
Nicole, this is Vicky from the OVAC region. And I have a couple of questions. Number
Sure.
one, you mentioned that the strategic goal worksheet will be posted in a Word version. Do you know about when that will be posted?
We can send it to you right after this call.
That would be fantastic. And then secondly, I just wanted to be sure that I heard you correctly, that we end up with X number of dollars based on the maximum per county, but once the contract is executed, we can decide to divide that evenly among counties, or based on need. I know some of our counties just operate differently. Is that correct, that we're not held
Yes.
to that max per county?
That's correct. So the max per county just is how we determine the amount of funds that can be provided per county. But because you're receiving the money as a collective, once a collaborative has that money, it's up to your determination to use the funds. Of course, they have to be in line with your action plan and your budget that you submitted. But if in planning you see that one county doesn't have a huge need, but another county does, that's completely up to you how the money's spent.
Nicole,
Awesome.
this
Thank
is
you
a
so
great
much.
way to use the early childhood profile information to look at each county. So if we're addressing kindergarten readiness, or even star ratings, whatever focus we want to focus on. If you've got a county in your collaborative that has a kindergarten readiness, I guess the Brigant score rate of 64%, and you've got another that has 27, maybe we want to kind of balance that and look at it and say, okay, which county needs the most assistance right now? And how can we address that? And this is a great opportunity to be able to make those decisions yourselves and not have our office say, no, you have to take this amount, they have to take that amount. It's okay to say, where's our greatest need? And I think it will help foster that collaborative spirit to be able to say, when we all rise together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brenda. And thank you for the question as well. That's a great discussion. Let's see. I think I saw a couple questions in the chat. I'm going to jump over there for 1 second. Let's see. Strategic goals worksheet. Okay. Strategic goals worksheet and conflict of interest. So we'll make sure that we get some follow-up out to you all as soon as we get off of this call. All right, so with that, I'm gonna jump over to the RFA. So something that might be exciting is that we're gonna call this a continuation grant, which means that we know that you all are doing this work, that you are our community early childhood councils, and this isn't new funding, this isn't new activities and strategies, this is just a continuation of what you do from year to year. So I know that it's just one word and it might not seem like a lot, but we're hoping that this is a push in a different direction a bit, to acknowledging how much great work has gone on in the past and how much we know will go on in the future. So I'm going to skip over the background and the history. Please read, as I know you will, but I'm not going to read it to you today. So something that we focused a lot on was cleaning up this RFA. In the past, there were a lot of goals and a lot of outcomes, and it was kind of hard to connect the dots to figure out what was going on. So we cleaned it up a bit, and the goal of this application is to make progress towards kindergarten readiness in your service area. And that's what you all work on every day. So this is a huge change. It's just a bit of a cleanup. So something that I really want to highlight, and I think I'll have some questions about, so I want to allow plenty of time for this, is the supplemental funding opportunity. So this is completely new. This is something that our office decided to offer this year, and then we will, see how it goes for future years. But supplemental funding is the opportunity to earn some additional funds for your council. And it's going to be based on your interest in accelerating your programs and making progress. And this is completely optional. So I really want to stress that to you. This might be a bit of a push, and it might be a bit more work for you all. And we acknowledge that completely. So please understand that this opportunity for additional funding is completely optional. Your decision to request additional funding or not won't affect your regular funding. But if you would like to receive some additional money for your council, we will have separate scoring for certain portions of the application. And that's also on the scoring sheet that we talked about. So this additional funding, it will be for accelerating the work that you're already doing. And we're going to walk through a couple examples of what that could mean in a minute. But I want to highlight on this that this money will be in addition to your regular funding amount. So your funding amount per county is what you'll get for your regular criteria. And then we're going to do a per point additional funding amount based on your scores on other categories. So this means we're excited about this because this means that for some of our smaller counties and smaller councils, you'll have that same opportunity to receive some additional funding at the same level that like a larger county or collaborative would have. So this funding is completely dependent on approval of the tobacco settlement dollars. So if we have great luck and we receive tobacco settlement dollars, then we will be able to move forward with this funding. But I really just want to make sure that I note that this is contingent on the settlement dollars.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. All right.
So do we have any questions about this kind of big picture of supplemental funding before we get into some examples?
Nicole, I'm sure somebody's wondering, what kind of money are we talking about for that? Is it like an extra $500 or is it an extra $1,000?
Sure.
What does that look like?
Yeah. So when we talked about this, we wanted to make sure that this was enough money to feel like you could actually do something with it. So again, this is contingent on tobacco dollars. So I can't really give a firm, like a solid number on this, but I'll explain the way that it's laid out is to give a maximum total of 50 points in different areas. So there are 5 different areas, maximum of 10 points each for a total of 50 points. And we would like to be able to have the opportunity to provide $500 per point. So if you received a perfect score, that would be $25,000. Now these will be scored competitively. So that's also important to note. Having a perfect score of 50, we might not see that in the first year. So I want to make sure that that's clear and that we kind of walk through that in the very beginning. But even with, a score of 40, that would be $20,000 based on your score and the number of points that you received for that section. Does that help to answer?
Cole, I think it's also interesting to make sure everyone knows, there are 5 separate categories for that supplemental funding, but you may choose to just work on one and really, say, okay, we want to spotlight this and we want to do it right and spend your time to really develop that and get the funding for that. And then, or you might say, I want to do 2. These 2 are in line with other things that we're doing. Or you might say, this doesn't work with what we're doing. You don't have to put something in all 5 of them. You can pick the ones that you want to focus on.
Right.
If you even choose to do it.
Right. If you choose to do it. And that's another important part. In order to be considered, you do have to just send a sentence in with your application that says I would, or our council would like to be considered for supplemental funding. And that's based on if you feel like your council has the capacity to do the extra work with the funding. So no worries if you can't, if you feel like you don't have the capacity, we completely understand and respect that. But if you do have the capacity and you want some additional funding, this opportunity is here for you. So I just wanted to make sure that we understand all of that and that we are able to talk about it today. So, yes.
This is Sandy from Northern Kentucky, and I just had a quick question about the supplemental narrative and assessment work. So like on the other requirements, you've indicated like this can only be 20 pages. Is there a recommendation on how many pages you would like that narrative, like a limit or a minimum?
Good question. So the supplemental component is going to be completely worked into your regular application. And we'll kind of walk through an example so that you see what that looks like, but this won't be a separate section at all. So we're still looking at the same page limit. Now, if we get into another week or so and we have a lot of councils reach out and say, I absolutely cannot do this in 20 pages, remembering that 20 pages doesn't include your appendices. But if it's absolutely not possible, then we could look at maybe extending that. But I really think that in that 20-page limit is where we would like to see all of the information.
Okay, perfect. Because I just know in years past, we've had a problem with the limit of 20 pages. So I just wanted to know what we were working with and how many the and ands I can use or eliminate.
Nicole, is it possible for certain areas where it would be feasible for them to just do bullets?
Yes.
That would eliminate some wording and be very
You do
concise
not
in the
need
bullets.
to use all of the words. And as we walk through this, you'll see that there are some sections where you really could just do bullets. As we think about this, I want you to also remember the people that are reviewing this, they are just people from the early childhood community who've obviously been trained on scoring, but they want to see what you're doing and the work that you're doing. And the formality of your writing is not going to be a factor in scoring your application. And that will be made clear to our reviewers as well. So don't feel like you need to do formal writing. Obviously check your spelling and grammar, but don't feel like you need to write a thesis or anything.
It doesn't
Nicole,
have to
I
be a
have
literary masterpiece, right?
Right.
Nicole, I have another question. Are we able to still separate the funding per county? You had mentioned trying to hit specific points or areas of concern for each region's school readiness, but are we still able to separate it by county?
Yes. Are you asking based on the table that's in the appendix?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, it's up to you. So if separating it by county is what works best for your council, then you can absolutely do that. And the same thing with the supplemental funding portion, that amount will be distributed to the fiscal agent along with the regular grant award, and that can be split up as you see fit. If you want to figure out like a percentage that's the same as your regular funding percentage, that's fine. If you want to do it a different way, it's completely up to you.
Okay, thank you.
Nicole, I'm sort of in line with what I think that was Barry just asked. What if so say you have a collaborative that has 4 counties, and what if one county wants to work on one of the supplementals and another county has a goal for another one? Can they earmark that money for that county since they're the ones that are filling out that portion for that?
Brenda, you have all the questions today. So this is something that we can definitely work towards. You want to make sure that you really lay this out in your action plan and address why in your needs assessment, in your service area assessment, address why that makes sense based on the data in your community. And if that is the case, then that would be perfectly acceptable. However, when we do those separate projects where only one county is doing a certain project or a certain focus, we also want to make sure that that information is being shared with the collaborative. So if that means that you have like a subcommittee or a group, a side group that's working on something, and then they report back to the collaborative at those meetings, then that's a perfectly fine way to run that. Does that?
I have a question. So if you do write for one county, the other counties are not eligible for supplemental money. So if there's multiple counties involved, so it's one pot, not a per county thing, right?
Right. The supplemental funding will be one pot of money for the collaborative.
Okay.
Does that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything in the chat. Someone asked about specifications on font and margins. So that will be the same as, 12-point font, reasonable margins. I won't be double checking to see if it's double spaced or space and a half, but just be reasonable with that. Don't use 8-point font and know that we won't be able to read it. I think 12-point font in a standard font size and text type is perfectly acceptable. So no curls font in size 4, but up to you. I want to go into, let's see, I scrolled and lost my spot. So our anticipated outcomes, these are in statute. These are in statute, so I can't just change them to make them into something else or something else that we want to focus on. So we removed other outcomes and other goals that were in the RFA in previous years, and we are just sticking with these 4 anticipated outcomes that are shown in the statute. And you're all familiar with these. These have been the outcomes for several years, so we won't go into detail on those. We'll have the same project summary as years past. We want to make sure that when you write that project summary, just really share, what you're doing in that. Don't feel like it needs to be like a structured masterpiece again. It can be, it's not going to be scored on the style of the writing. So just keep that in mind. The next section will be your service area assessment. I think this was called a needs assessment in the past, maybe. So this is going to be where you kind of take inventory of what's available in your community. So when we rewrote this, we really looked at asking the question, so what are the existing birth to 5 resources? And then we have some sub bullets here. So, what are there literacy programs? Are there family engagement programs? And this is a place where you could kind of use bullets to say like the available resources and programs are. And then, you can share those however fits best on your page. And then we're going to talk about, are there different partners that are available? The same thing with organized care, which we list what organized care includes. And remember that organized care can also include in-home care, not just like a child care facility. So there's some questions that can be answered here. You don't need to answer these in bullet form. If it makes more sense for you to answer these in a bullet form instead of in a narrative form, that's perfectly fine. Just focus on, readability for the reviewer when you look at this. And these questions should all be able to be answered from your early childhood profile, which is refreshing. So make sure that when you are writing your application, you're using this profile. You can sort by your collaborative here, or you can sort by specific counties here. And then you can change the assessment type if you'd like, and see the rates for your counties. So keep in mind that resource. The technical notes on this is a good place to start if you're not sure what's available on the profile. That has some pretty good information to get you started. And if you do have other questions about using the profile, feel free to email us and we can help address those. Right, so, and then I want to also highlight that there are these sections marked as additional consideration. So these are the places in the application where you can earn additional points for supplemental funding if you want to be considered. So when you read this, if you don't want to be considered for funding, you don't have time, capacity, resources, you're happy with your current level of funding, and it's not something that you want to do, this is not a mandatory section. We encourage all of the councils to look at these questions and put some thought into them, even if you don't want to be considered for funding, and maybe try and take a stab at answering them. But if you are not requesting that additional funding, these questions aren't scored as part of your regular score. So that's important to note. So just keep an eye out for these additional consideration portions when you are writing your application. And then we have a section for gaps and opportunities. So you're going to use the information that you shared in part 1 and 2 to talk about any gaps in your collaborative, and then how can you address those gaps. So are there any questions on the service area assessment?
I have one about the percentage of children in 3, 4, or 5-star settings. Is it enough to say the number of providers, or do we need to go in and calculate more in depth, like how many individual kids, because I wasn't quite sure how to do that based on the early child, the ECP.
If you're able to communicate with those centers and kind of figure out that number and calculate it, that's great. That kind of helps. The intention of this is to give you as the council more information to really think about where your needs are. So, you know, if you have like 55-star centers in your area and that's just going to be like not possible for you to do, understandable. If you have one 5-star center and they only have 10 kids, then maybe that's a data point that would be important for your council when you think
Gotcha.
about what you're going to do. So really just kind of use these questions as like a starting point to think what you're going to be doing.
Okay, thank you.
So, hang on. So Nicole, this is Sandy again. So am I hearing you that these bullets, you don't necessarily have to have an answer for them all? It's more of a guide, because thinking about how many slots are available for 125 centers in R3 or county seems almost impossible to get by April 30th. So these are just guides and we don't have to have the specific answers in this form.
Correct. These are guides, but these are guides to guide your work that you're going to be doing. So while these will be used in scoring your application, if you look at the rubric, you'll see that there isn't like a points assigned to how many slots are available. But I think what you would be looking for here is, you know, are there 100 slots available? Are there 100,000 slots available? And then does your council need to do something about that? Or would your council be able to do something about that?
Yeah, and I think it does. I just think the barrier for this one is when you think about capacity versus enrollment. And if I call on Wednesday, those slots could change by Thursday afternoon. So I guess that's just where it seems of a barrier to try to capture that like robust data that say that this is true data when we send it in, or true data, you know, when we're looking at collecting it, because it's just so flexible and it's just hard to calculate, because I don't know where to find it other than calling all the centers and asking what their enrollment is, unless you have a really good tip on how to find that.
Right. And we don't have that specific data sent to our office either. So again, just answer these questions to kind of the best of your ability and if it's available to you. So again, on the slots available, I think something that we'd be looking at here is, you know, in your collaborative, there are some counties, you know, with like very limited childcare. And this might be a question for them to really think about. Whereas a county with a lot of availability and there are a lot of slots available, whether that means filled or vacant, you know, you can say our county has a plethora of childcare options. Maybe don't use that phrase in your application, but you understand like we're just kind of looking at like, this is really low, this seems really high, like we're kind of right in the middle type of thing. So don't worry if, you know, that data is impossible to retrieve, but also keep that in mind that that is a data point that's hard to find for kind of like moving forward in future conversations. Right, so I think we are going to pause here quickly to kind of discuss what the supplemental funding question and answer could be for this section. So we're going to look at how is the council effectively working with organized care providers. And I'm going to pull in Brenda to help us kind of walk this through. So let's see. So additional consideration for this would kind of talk about how are your councils involved in the process? What are the barriers that they have? What are opportunities for growth or for partnerships? So Brenda's going to walk us through kind of like the starting point for where you might be, and then what like one step higher is.
So I'm going to pick the Heartland CECC, which is Lance Blanford is the chair, and that's Nelson, Marion, LaRue, and Washington. at Christmas this year, because all of the CECCs have struggled with trying to get the funding out in a contactless society where we can't do so many of the things that we normally do. They chose to do, I think it was 10 days of bedtime stories. It was right around Christmas. And they had different community leaders read the story, but with each opportunity to read, they, like they said, I am demonstrating dialogic reading, or I'm demonstrating how to read a book without reading all the words. You know, maybe you got a book that has like tons of words on a page, you're reading it to a 2-year-old. How can you kind of say, and this is what's going on here? And so that was their starting point. And actually, that could actually just be like the middle of the road. If you if you put it on 5 points, let's say that's a 3, okay? And the 1 is giving out books. And the 2 is just, you know, having somebody share a book at school or something like that. But with the one that they did, the people did the story. They signed in through Facebook. It was a Facebook Live event every night. It was advertised through their webpage, their Facebook page. And the parents had to, there was like a word, like a secret word. And somewhere in the middle of that, the person who was reading the story would say, and your word for tonight is. And at the end of those days, they contacted their CEC through their Facebook page and listed all the words. And then every word that they knew, they got a book for that night. So you had the opportunity to get 10 books. So then the collaborative bought the books, distributed those to everyone. And if you wanted to take it to a 4 or a 5 point, you could say, what do you do to follow up? Do you send a survey to those parents asking, did they find it was easier to read to their children afterwards? Did they learn any skills? And then you could take that to the 5th point and say, how are we going to expand this next year? What else could we do to take this further? So, you know, what they did was perfectly fine. But if we were going to follow through with that, because they had a lot of response, what would that look like if they wanted to follow it up and expand it a little bit and take that to a different level? Is that what you want to hear, Nicole?
Absolutely. So then from Brenda's point, I'm going to take it up to another level. So what would happen if you did everything that Brenda was saying? Maybe you're there already and you're like, okay, what's the next step for us then? We already do, you know, we do the same type of thing and we have a follow-up and we're really thinking about what the sustainability is of this program and what the impact is and what's the next step for us. So then we could think about what other community partners could come into this. Could you bring in, do you want to have a focus on maybe like mental health for your children, or, you know, school readiness if it's going to be around back to school season? Can you read books that have to do with that topic? And then maybe it's for back to school and you decide, you know, we're going to start with this reading program and then we're going to use this to have 3 to 4 touch points for these children before they get into kindergarten. Involve the kindergarten teacher from every school in our collaborative, and we're going to involve all of the child care centers to make sure that we're reaching all the kids that are about to go into kindergarten. So there's just so many different levels where you could take an initial project of doing like that book, the book reading sessions on Facebook that Brenda talked about, and really extend it to create a community of practice. So when we think about scoring for our 10, like the 10-point highest possible score on this competitive supplemental funding, 10 points would be you are really creating a community of practice and something that's going to be an ongoing, a year round or every year, and it has like multiple stakeholders and collaborations involved. So there are different levels and you can earn points regardless of the level that you're on. So if you are interested in funding, don't feel intimidated that you aren't ready to go from sharing books to a community of practice. If you're going from sharing books to having 3 to 4 touch points before kindergarten, because that's a best practice for kindergarten readiness, then that's great. And we hope that we can support you in doing that. So I hope that that example helps.
Nicole, it also occurs to me that, you know, some of you may have projects that often you've thought, well, if we had enough money, this is something we would really like to do. So be, maybe paying someone to build an app that parents could access through their phones with information, that links all the schools and kindergarten registration times and things like that. It can be whatever you want. Maybe you want to set up a resource packet or something to give to parents. A lot of places have already done that. But this is also an opportunity to look and say, okay, we're at ground zero. And this is where we want to start, but this is where we hope it will go. You can still get 10 points. It's about the process that you plan and think about what you're going to do in the future. And then next year, when that continuation grant comes forward, then we would look at it and say, okay, so where are we on this? And we would look at what you've done in year one and say, oh gosh, they're already at like what the third, they've really vamped it up. And so, yeah, we want to support this to continue. So it doesn't just have to be something that you're already doing that you want to vamp up. It could be something that you always wanted to do and there just wasn't enough funding to do it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brenda. So it's important to note also that these are going to be, it can be a new project like what Brenda said that you want to start and continue, but don't feel like you need to create a new activity under each area. It's just like either you want to improve and accelerate something that you're already doing, or you're looking at a project that you just haven't had funding for that you can continue. All right, so then we have our action plan narrative, which is the next section. This is going to be very similar. This is just how are you going to use that data to create your plan for the year, to determine which activities you're going to use to reach your goals. Again, we kind of walk you through what this means, how you can write this and how you can outline this. Try to think of this as like an outline for your plan and for your application. If you don't have this information, do it the very best you can. Try and think creatively about how you could come to, maybe you're having trouble with quantitative and qualitative data. It's okay if you think about this, think about it out of the box, or ask other people in your council what you think could be collected, and just try and come to something that you think would be measurable and valuable. So then another point that I want to highlight is the transition to kindergarten plan. If you haven't looked at this, this is a great resource for you to take a look at. So this references the 3 age points that we have in the application. These are the same in the years past. So we want to make sure that you have one activity at least that is in each age group. So prenatal to home, home to early care, and pre-kindergarten to kindergarten. Another additional consideration point would be action plans that target these transition points. And then I want to make sure that we get time to go over our budget. So we looked at our goal planning worksheets, and these are what we're going to be sending out in Word and also posting to the website as soon as we get off this call. So I'm not going to go over these again, but again, if you have questions about them, feel free to reach out. I want to take a minute to, let's talk about our community collaborative plan, and then I'll jump back up to our budget proposal worksheet. So we know last year was our first year for our collaboratives. So this section, what we are looking for you to do is really just talk about how the year went, what were strengths and weaknesses, and how are your communities being represented? How could they be represented better? Like, was there a gap somewhere along the way where you didn't have a county or community represented as well as you hope to? So just kind of think about all of these things when you're writing this section. Again, don't feel like you need to write it in a very formal style. We're just looking to kind of see how things went during the past year. And as you know, we're going to be using this to help kind of guide technical assistance throughout the year. So please feel free to share any information that you have that you'd like to share. So with that, I'm going to jump to our budget template. Right. Let's see. Can you all give me a reaction to how you feel about using Excel? Like a 50-50, couple of thumbs up. All right. Excellent. Okay, so I am gonna just walk through this really quickly. So I tried to write directions that would be clear to everyone using this. If they don't seem clear, or if I made typos, feel free to let me know. So again, this references the supplemental funding amount, which, as we talked about, 50 points maximum for a total of $25,000 possible, if contingent on funding availability. So when you fill this out, you're going to put the chair information up here in the yellow boxes, the fiscal agent information here, the grant amount, the primary grant amount. So this is the total from the appendix, not including the supplemental funding amount, just the total of your counties. And then just like we did last year when this was in Word, I think it was in Word in a table, just put in the dollar amount in these fields. So $100, $100. You're getting a really small grant this year. Looks like we're only getting $208 total this year based on the numbers I put in here. So you do that just like normal. And then if you are applying for supplemental funding and you want to be considered, you're going to need to put in a percentage of what you anticipate using this grant for. So if you're going to spend 5% on travel and 95% of whatever you're awarded on supplies, materials, and equipment, then put the percentages in there like that. Don't put a dollar amount in, because the amount that you're being awarded is going to be determined after you submit your application. Does that make sense? Okay. Getting the thumbs. Excellent. Okay, and then down here, you all don't need to put anything in here. What's going to happen is once we determine that you earned $20,000 on your supplemental funding, someone from GOEC will plug the numbers in here, and that will calculate, what your actual budget would look like. And then we can send this back to you so that you'll have the actual budget with that funding amount. And then again, you don't need to fill out anything in this bottom black bar. This is all just for internal use. So it's just the top section. So I wanted to make sure that we walk through that before we jump off. And if you do have questions about any of this, feel free to email us, call us, send questions on the form. Any way that you would like to communicate your questions is perfectly fine. So we have 5 minutes left, and I want to open it up for some more questions if we have any. Again, feel free to share. Feel free to ask questions on that Google form if you don't want to share today as well. I'm going to stop share. Right, so do we have any questions?
This is a very self-serving question, okay?
Sure.
I'm saying within the context that I'm the project specialist for the youth apprenticeship, okay? So we have 30 new youth apprenticeship partners this year, employers that are going to be hiring youth apprentices in August, some of them as early as June. And if the council wanted to support that in any way, is there an optional funding part that lets them do that? Is that in there somewhere as an initiative for the council?
There is. So there is a section in the RFA, and I'm not sure where it is, which section it's under. Let me see if I can find it really fast. But we are allowing for councils to support the apprenticeship program. So if the council, for example, I think, Brenda, you have a good example of how councils could support that apprenticeship program. It is a great program. Brenda, if you want to just share what that support would look like, you're welcome.
Well, I know that when an employer hires the youth apprenticeship, usually the school's transportation, but if there are transportation costs that go outside of that for training and things, that would be a good way to do that. I'm sorry, but my computer's about to die. and I've got to make sure it's plugged in.
No worries.
I'm like, what have I done here?
So what you would want to do, if that's something that your council is interested in supporting, that apprenticeship program, when you do your needs assessment and your service area assessment, if something that you see is that like it's hard to find people to work in early childhood workforce, and that's really shown through data in your community, then by all means, you're welcome to work on that as an initiative of your council.
So I'm plugged in now. The example I wanted to share was a lot of these students are graduating high school with their child development CDA credential. Some of them are awaiting their review after high school. And if that's the case, the high school FCS program does not pay for it at that point. And if they're taking classes part-time at like a KCTCS division, then their KEYS money is going to go there. But the council could support the pay for the review for the CDA.
All right, thanks, Brenda. All right, so I don't see any more questions. I'm going to be sending out a follow-up email.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I haven't looked at it yet, so it may be on there, but when is the due date?
April 30th.
April 30th. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so look for a follow-up email from us. If you feel like you need more support and an additional webinar on a specific section would be helpful, just reach out to us with that. If you want to collaborate with another council and talk to them about what they're doing, let us know that too. We can try and make a little bit of networking happen for you all with some councils in similar situations.
Nicole, I have a question. This is Christy with Oldham. For the supplemental funding, is there anywhere listed about, things that are absolutely not allowed? There, like there is for the original.
Yeah, it'll be the same criteria.
Okay, so training staff is eligible, but is it still 5% is allowed for a coordinator? And it would be the
Right.
same for the amount. So let's just say you got 20,000, you could, in extra money, you could put 5% towards a coordinator to that as well. Okay.
Correct. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna stay on for a minute if anyone has any questions. But we will see you all soon. Good luck in your grant writing. Have a great week. I hope you have a long weekend for Easter and you get to celebrate. So we'll see you all soon. I'm gonna stay here for maybe 5 minutes, just in case anybody has questions. Christy, are you still here?
I am, yes. So
You don't have no intent to apply.
okay. But you just need to indicate on the main application if you do intend to apply for the supplemental funding.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question that has always it's lingered in my mind since last year's collaboration, and that was the membership list. We have 5 counties, and it's so our counties are split. It's Madison, Estill, Clark, Powell, Montgomery, and we have representation of 2 different Head Start regions, and
Okay.
so we have worked and included in our membership representation from 2 different Head Start organization. Is that required, or do we just have to have one? I mean, it makes sense that yes, you want as much representation across your area, so your service area, but we've really had a difficult time getting participation, and I'm like minimum. I don't even know that for one Head Start district, maybe they participated in like on our actual meetings, like one.
And it would be helpful to have that spot for someone that else that's going to participate.
Yes.
Let me just.
Well,
Okay.
and the nice thing is you can have more than one. You just have to have at least one, right?
Right, exactly.
It'd be nice if you had more, wouldn't it? But, you really only have to have one on that membership list for each of those categories. But you'd love to have 4 or 5, some from every county. Unfortunately, as we know, that's probably not going to happen.
So yeah, I get that. I totally get that. But the issue is that we have 2. I mean, does it make a difference that we have 2 separate Head Start?
So your council, I know that this got a little bit confusing, I think last year, where it went from like separate counties being the council to a collaborative council. So when we say the council, we're referring to the collaborative. So that means that your council needs to have at least 1 member from Head Start. So only 1. So if
okay,
you have a Head Start that like isn't, was that a question? Was that not the question? Sorry.
Well, it was and was not. Actually, it was because we have the 2 representation, represented. We strive to find someone from both Head Start agencies, and I mean, we were pretty adamant about trying to do that because we felt like that was, a strong requirement of that 27, make up that 27. And, we do. And it's one of the struggles for a 5-county council. It really is. It's just difficult to split it up and to pool and give equal opportunity and representation from all 5 counties. So where we kind of resolved it is that we just wanted to make sure that the community agencies that are a part of all of the councils, like the library, right, and maybe community-based services, and those other agencies that are a part of all of our communities, that at least we have a representation from at least one of those. Does that make sense? Yeah.
That does. Something that I think we need to clarify, and this should probably be broadcasted to the whole group. So when in the statute, it says that you can have up to 27 members. So those are 27 voting members.
Right. Yeah.
I want to make sure that we make that distinction, because if you want to have people who are non-voting members, that is perfectly okay. That's above that 27. And I don't know if that would help in your situation.
Well, we did. We've always had what's frustrating, as you can imagine, is that we've had under that non-voting members, and we list them as guests, but they are consistent. Like, they're at every single meeting. And then we have those that are designated as a voting member who don't ever show up.
Right. And you're welcome to, apart from the requirements, you're welcome to adjust that throughout the year. And I'm not sure if it's because of the requirements in the statute that you're not able to switch voting and non-voting. But if you wanted to make that amendment and have people become voting members that were previously non-voting, then that's okay too.
Right. Yeah, that I can see us running into some uncomfortable situations there. Okay. All right. Well, that's I appreciate the discussion because it
Yeah,
really.
and thank you for that feedback too. I think that will be helpful going forward if we have the opportunity to like make some additional changes in the future. That's always good feedback.
Okay.
Nicole, I have a question leading to
Sure.
that. So since that seems to have changed, since it used to be that if you had two different grantees, you would have to have both of those Head Start grantees on your council. So if that's changed, has the rule changed that you can't have a quorum and vote unless you have childcare, preschool, and Head Start present?
So that would be the same. You'd still need the quorum of your voting members.
We do have a quorum, but we were told last year that we wouldn't be able to vote even if we had a quorum if there was not a child care and Head Start and preschool present as a part of that quorum. That's what we were told last year.
Is it written into your, did we tell you, when I say we, I wasn't here, but did we tell you that, or is that in your bylaws?
No, that's not in our bylaws. That was what we were told at the initial of last year, that none of our minutes would count unless those three were present within our quorum, because they were
Okay.
required to be on the council, which they were. But it just, most of them are present during any voting, but, occasionally somebody has a meeting and we can't. So could you follow up on that? Because that was a
let me
new
double
thing.
check with you.
It was a
Sure.
new thing last year, and for 20 years that wasn't ever an issue.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it came up last year and it just blew our mind.
I'm just not sure that that is correct, because that's why Nicole went over the original mandate. What are we legally required to do with this? And that's why she went through and said, okay, the only thing that is part of the mandate are these 4 points.
Yes.
There's nothing in there that says something like that, but I'm sure we can follow up on that. But I'm pretty sure, because it's never been that way before.
I agree with you. And the two grantees was never a part of it either until about 10 years ago. And then they changed it to that. And now it sounds like it's back to what seems to make more sense and what the regulation says. But
yeah,
so that's good. I really appreciate going through and trying to pull out opinion and pull out what it
exactly.
actually says.
We just wanted to present the facts.
Yes.
And Nicole really did her homework. She went through and said, okay, well, I'm looking at this last one application, and then I'm looking at the one before and the one before. Okay, where do these things come from? And she was sent to, and she was like, okay, well, the only thing in the statute is actually this. And I think people might have added what they thought it should look like, and that's not what this is about. This is a grant. There are parameters that are listed in statute, and that's what we're trying to do. And so I really think, I'm not sure that that was correct. And I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but we've never done it that way before. But I think it's great that Nicole went through it and took it back to the bare bones to say, okay, what is actually written about this? And I think she'll be able to get back with you very quickly, because that was pretty clear what was actually in it.
Yeah, I'll follow up on
appreciate
why that was said and what it really should be.
Chris,
Yeah.
Christy,
Yes.
Christy, this
Yes.
is Christy Lunsford.
Yes.
I'm with you on that. I think that was conveyed at some point.
Yeah.
That you had to have a vote from those required, groups or organizations or whatnot. But the way that we interpreted that is that we, if they weren't present on our Zoom call, then we would send requests and explain, what the item was for voting, and we would require to get a vote from those members, because we had 6 school districts, even though there's 5 counties. We had 6, so we had to get specifically the votes of those 6 from school districts. We had to get 2 Head Start, because that's how we had interpreted that, right? And if you go along those same lines, you had to get 5 childcare. So
Well, why would you ever even want to take this on?
That's
right.
That was the point.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it easier. It makes it more difficult. And so,
Well,
you know, when it all
everything
started,
Nicole's
it
tried
wasn't
to
that
do is
way.
she's really worked hard, and she's included me in this because I've served on my local CECC, and I really tried to translate, look, this is what it looks like, boots on the ground. And this is who actually is going to come to your meetings. You're not going to have 27 that come to every meeting, probably. And so she really went through, she really tried to hear the participant side of it and not just the state level side. And she really, really vamped this application to reflect the fact that most of the people that are working on this are not grant writers, and they shouldn't be expected to write like one. So I know that would have been a source of contention, and I, especially after collaborating everyone. So I would be very, very surprised if that is actually a thing, because I don't know how anybody could function and do that. And one of the nice things is, it's not a nice thing. It's because of COVID, therefore it's not a nice thing. But everybody has revamped the way they look at doing things virtually. And so the things that you can get accomplished now without actually meeting in person and signing a piece of paper in person makes it a lot easier too. So I hope that helps.
I know we still have a couple of people on here. Do we have any other questions? You're just hanging out with us to eat your lunch. I understand. Oh, they're leaving now. You can stay with us.
I was just Liz waiting to listen on any outstanding questions. Thank you so much, Nicole. It was very good today, and we'll just tap away at what we're going to do this year. Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.